Hey everyone, tonight we're settling into something beautifully mysterious, something that might change how you see the gentle world you've built with your own hands. We're exploring the hidden depths of Animal Crossing, that seemingly simple universe where every flower planted and every friendship formed might hold secrets about human nature, economic systems, and the very fabric of peaceful existence. Forget the surface-level charm you've experienced before. Tonight, we're going deeper into the philosophical mysteries that can guide you toward understanding what it truly means to create meaning in a world of endless possibility. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely find value in what we explore here together. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what your favorite villager has taught you about life. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world, all seeking that same deeper understanding of the communities we build and tend. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together through the peaceful mysteries of village life. Picture this. It's a quiet evening in your village. The street lamps casting their warm glow over cobblestone paths you've walked 1,000 times before. The sound of waves laps gently at your shores, and somewhere in the distance you can hear the soft chime of bells carried on the evening breeze. This is Animal Crossing, but tonight we're not seeing it as the simple, wholesome game the world believes it to be. Tonight, we're recognizing it for what it might truly represent: a complex examination of human psychology, economic systems, and the delicate balance between freedom and control that shapes every community, real or digital. At the center of this deceptively peaceful world stands a figure who has become as iconic as he is controversial. Tom Nook, the mild-mannered tanuki who greets every new resident with a warm smile and an offer they literally cannot refuse. On the surface, he appears to be nothing more than a helpful business owner, someone who provides essential services to a growing community. But look deeper, and you'll begin to see something far more complex and potentially sinister. A carefully constructed system of economic dependency that mirrors some of the most troubling aspects of modern capitalism. The Tom Nook capitalist theory suggests that this cheerful raccoon dog represents something profound and disturbing about the nature of debt, ownership, and economic control in contemporary society. When you first arrive in any Animal Crossing village, you're immediately indebted to Tom Nook. There's no negotiation, no alternative housing option, no choice to decline his generosity. You need shelter, and he provides it, but that provision comes with strings attached that will define your relationship with the village for as long as you choose to stay. This initial debt isn't presented as exploitation. Tom Nook's demeanor is friendly, even paternal. He explains the situation with the patience of a kindly uncle, assuring you that there's no rush to repay what you owe. No interest, no penalties, no collectors knocking at your door in the middle of the night. But herein lies the genius of the system he represents. The debt is structured in such a way that you want to repay it. The tiny house he provides feels inadequate almost immediately. Your neighbors live in larger homes with more rooms, better furniture, more space to express their personalities and pursue their interests. The psychological pressure to upgrade isn't applied through threats or coercion, but through the simple human desire to improve one's circumstances and keep up with community standards. And so begins what many theorists recognize as a perfect representation of the modern debt cycle. You work to earn bells, the village currency, through activities that Tom Nook has either directly or indirectly organized. You catch fish and bugs to sell to his nephews, Timmy and Tommy, You shake trees for fruit that ultimately gets converted to bells through his economic network. You participate in the turnip market, a barely disguised stock exchange that introduces elements of speculation and risk to what should be a simple agricultural community. Every economic activity in the village somehow flows through or benefits the Nook business empire. But Tom Nook's genius isn't just in creating economic dependency. It's in making that dependency feel like freedom, like personal choice and individual achievement. When you finally earn enough bells to pay off your initial debt, Tom Nook congratulates you warmly and immediately offers to expand your home. The expansion is presented as an opportunity, a chance to improve your living situation and express your growing success within the community. The fact that this improvement comes with an even larger debt burden is mentioned almost casually, as if it's a minor detail rather than the central mechanism that will define your relationship with the village economy for the foreseeable future. This cycle repeats itself throughout your time in the village. Each home expansion bringing greater debt, each debt payment leading to another offer for improvement. The amounts grow exponentially. Your first debt might be 19,800 bells, a sum that seems manageable when you're catching fish worth hundreds of bells each. But by the time you're facing your final mortgage payment of 7,760,000 bells, the economic reality of your situation becomes undeniable. You have become a debt serf in a system designed to extract your labor while maintaining the illusion that you're building personal wealth and achieving the dream of home ownership. What makes this system particularly insidious is how it mirrors real-world predatory lending practices. Like many predatory lenders, Tom Nook targets individuals who are vulnerable and have limited options. New residents to the village have no alternative housing, no existing relationships or support systems, and no understanding of the local economy. They're completely dependent on Tom Nook's guidance and generosity. He provides what appears to be a fair deal, housing with no interest and no time pressure for repayment. But this apparent fairness masks the deeper structural inequalities that the system creates and maintains. The psychological manipulation involved is subtle but profound. Tom Nook never pressures you directly to take on additional debt. Instead, he creates conditions where taking on that debt feels like the natural, inevitable choice of a successful and growing member of the community. Your neighbors have larger homes, better furniture, more impressive collections of art and artifacts. The museum curator speaks knowledgeably about specimens and artifacts that require significant investment to obtain. The social fabric of the village creates constant, gentle pressure to participate more fully in the economic system that Tom Nook controls. And participate you do, because the alternative is to remain in a tiny house that feels increasingly inadequate as your understanding of what's possible in the village expands. You work harder, stay up later, organize your activities around the most profitable possible uses of your time. You begin to think like an entrepreneur, planning your daily activities around market prices, seasonal availability, and maximum efficiency. You develop strategies for debt repayment that would impress professional financial advisors. And through all of this, you tell yourself that you're playing a relaxing game about building a peaceful community. But Tom Nook's influence extends far beyond simple real estate transactions. As your debt to him grows, so does his control over the fundamental structure of village life. He owns the main shop, controlling what goods are available and at what prices. He employs Timmy and Tommy, who manage day-to-day retail operations but clearly answer to their uncle's broader vision for the village economy. He has connections with external traders and merchants, determining what exotic goods and services become available to village residents. He even influences village infrastructure projects, often serving as the funding source or logistical coordinator for community improvements. This concentration of economic power in the hands of a single individual creates what economists recognize as a monopolistic environment. Villagers have no alternative sources for many essential goods and services. There's no competing real estate market, no alternative retail establishment, no independent financial institution where residents might secure loans or investment opportunities outside of Tom Nook's influence. The entire economic system of the village is designed to channel wealth and labor toward a single entity, who then redistributes just enough benefit to maintain the system's stability and the participants' willing cooperation. The psychological effects of this system on village residents are subtle but significant. People begin to internalize the logic of debt and consumption as natural and inevitable aspects of community life. The idea that housing, goods, and services should be freely available to meet human needs becomes inconceivable. Everything has a price. Everything must be earned. And the primary measure of personal worth becomes one's ability to generate bells and service debt obligations. Community members who might otherwise cooperate and share resources instead find themselves competing for scarce economic opportunities and measuring their success against their neighbors' material accumulation. Even more troubling is how the system shapes villagers' understanding of work and leisure. Activities that might naturally be pursued for personal enjoyment, artistic expression, or community benefit become evaluated primarily in terms of their economic productivity. Fishing transforms from a peaceful, meditative practice into a grinding pursuit of the most valuable species. Gardening shifts from a creative collaboration with natural processes to a calculated optimization of space and resources for maximum bell generation. Social interactions become opportunities to exchange valuable items or information about economic opportunities, rather than genuine expressions of friendship and mutual care. Tom Nook's control over village media and information systems further reinforces his economic dominance. The daily announcements that shape villagers' understanding of current events and opportunities often highlight economic activities, market conditions, and consumption opportunities. The bulletin board serves as a community space, but also as a venue for advertising Nook-related services and promoting participation in economic activities that benefit his business interests. Even seemingly independent sources of information, like the museum's educational programs or KK, Slider's musical performances, operate within an economic framework that ultimately supports the broader system of debt and consumption that Tom Nook has established. The international trade relationships that Tom Nook maintains with other islands and communities reveal the extent to which his local monopoly connects to broader networks of economic extraction and control. The turnip market, for example, introduces villagers to the volatility and speculation that characterize modern financial markets, but always within a framework where Tom Nook's business associates control the fundamental mechanisms of price determination and market access. Villagers learn to think like day traders and commodity speculators, but they do so within a rigged system where the house always has significant advantages and ordinary participants bear the majority of risks. Perhaps most significantly, Tom Nook's system creates what economists call a debt trap, a situation where individuals become so indebted that they cannot conceive of alternatives to their current economic arrangements. Villagers who have invested years of labor into paying down massive mortgages cannot easily walk away from their investment, even if they recognize that the system is fundamentally exploitative. They have become psychologically and economically dependent on relationships and structures that may not serve their long-term interests, but that they cannot abandon without losing everything they have worked to build. The genius of Tom Nook's approach is that he makes this exploitation feel like empowerment, this dependency feel like independence, this systematic extraction of labor and wealth feel like community building and personal achievement. Villagers genuinely believe they are pursuing their own freely chosen goals when they work obsessively to generate bells, expand their homes, and accumulate possessions. The system is so well designed that participants experience their participation as voluntary, meaningful, and beneficial, even as it systematically transfers wealth and power from individual community members to a single controlling entity. As we drift deeper into sleep tonight, consider the villages you've built and tended with such care and attention. Consider the hours you've invested in catching fish and bugs, the satisfaction you've felt with each mortgage payment, the pride you've taken in your expanding home and growing collection of furniture and art. These experiences are real and meaningful, but they exist within a framework that might reveal uncomfortable truths about the economic systems that shape our waking lives. The gentle tyranny of Tom Nook's capitalism isn't a bug in the system of village life. It might be the most honest feature, a mirror that shows us exactly how seductive and comfortable our own economic dependency can become when it's wrapped in the language of opportunity, choice, and community development. But there's something even more unsettling about the temporal mechanics that govern village life, something that challenges our fundamental understanding of causality, aging, and the natural progression of existence itself. In the world of Animal Crossing, time moves in ways that defy conventional physics and raise profound questions about the nature of reality within these seemingly peaceful communities. The temporal anomaly theory suggests that villages exist within carefully constructed bubbles of manipulated time, where the normal rules of aging, decay, and linear progression have been suspended or fundamentally altered for purposes that remain mysterious and potentially troubling. Consider the most obvious temporal anomaly that every village resident experiences but rarely questions. Your animal neighbors never age. Villagers who have lived in the community for years, even decades according to their own accounts, remain exactly as they were when they first arrived. Their appearances don't change. Their voices don't deepen or roughen with age. Their energy levels remain constant. Their personalities show no signs of the gradual evolution that characterizes normal psychological development. They exist in a state of temporal stasis that suggests either supernatural intervention or technological manipulation of biological processes. This temporal suspension extends beyond mere physical appearance to encompass what should be natural cycles of growth, learning, and change. Villagers repeat the same activities day after day, season after season, year after year, without showing signs of boredom, without developing new interests, without the restlessness that typically drives living beings to seek novel experiences and challenges. They water the same flowers, take the same walks, express the same thoughts and concerns as if experiencing them for the first time, even when these interactions have been repeated hundreds or thousands of times over the course of their residence in the village. But perhaps the most telling evidence of temporal manipulation comes from examining your own experience as the village's human resident. Unlike your animal neighbors, you retain memories of your activities, your relationships, your accomplishments and failures. You learn and grow and change in ways that suggest normal temporal progression. Yet you also exist outside certain temporal constraints that govern the rest of reality. You can manipulate time itself through what's euphemistically called time travel, adjusting the village's temporal flow to suit your needs and desires without apparent consequence or limitation. This ability to manipulate time isn't presented as supernatural or technological within the context of village life. It's simply accepted as a natural aspect of your role as the community's human resident. You can accelerate time to speed through periods of waiting or boredom, reverse time to correct mistakes or revisit missed opportunities, even stop time entirely to preserve moments of particular beauty or significance. The mechanism by which this temporal control operates is never explained, never questioned, never examined as the profound violation of natural law that it clearly represents. The implications of this temporal manipulation become even more disturbing when you consider how it affects your relationships with other village residents. When you reverse time to replay a conversation or interaction, your neighbors have no memory of the previous iteration. They repeat their dialogue, their gestures, their emotional responses with perfect fidelity, as if they are sophisticated programs running predetermined scripts, rather than conscious beings capable of genuine, spontaneous response. Their inability to perceive or remember temporal manipulation suggests that they exist within a different temporal framework than you do, one that can be reset, adjusted, and controlled without their awareness or consent. This temporal control also extends to environmental and economic systems within the village. Seasonal changes can be accelerated or delayed at will. Trees can be made to bear fruit out of season. Buildings can be constructed and demolished according to manipulated timelines rather than natural construction schedules. Market prices and availability can be influenced through temporal manipulation that allows you to exploit information about future conditions for personal economic advantage. The entire ecosystem of village life becomes subject to temporal engineering that serves your convenience and desires while potentially disrupting natural cycles and relationships in ways that aren't immediately apparent. The psychological effects of existing within a manipulated temporal environment are subtle but profound. Normal human development depends on experiencing genuine consequences for decisions, learning from irreversible mistakes, and accepting the limitations that time imposes on all living beings. When time can be manipulated at will, when mistakes can be undone, when consequences can be avoided through temporal reversal, the foundation for authentic, moral, and psychological development begins to erode. You become accustomed to a level of control over reality that no natural being possesses, leading to what might be called temporal narcissism, the belief that your desires and convenience should override the natural order of existence. This temporal narcissism manifests in increasingly casual attitudes toward the manipulation of time and reality. What initially might feel like cheating or exploitation gradually becomes normalized as simply another tool for optimizing your village experience. The ethical implications of manipulating time to exploit economic systems, replay social interactions until you achieve desired outcomes, or avoid the natural consequences of poor decisions, become invisible when temporal control is treated as a routine aspect of village life, rather than a profound violation of natural law. But the temporal anomaly theory suggests something even more unsettling about the nature of these temporal manipulations. The technology or supernatural force that enables time travel within village environments might not be under your control at all. Instead, your apparent ability to manipulate time might be an illusion, a carefully constructed simulation designed to make you believe you have agency and control while actually serving purposes that you don't understand and can't perceive. Consider the possibility that what you experience as time travel is actually movement between parallel reality simulations, each calibrated to provide specific experiences and outcomes. Your sense of reversing time to replay events might actually involve switching to an alternate simulation where those events haven't yet occurred, but will unfold in precisely the same way unless you make different choices. This would explain why your neighbors show no awareness of temporal manipulation while maintaining perfect consistency in their responses and behaviors across multiple iterations of the same interactions. This parallel simulation theory raises profound questions about the nature of consciousness and identity within village environments. If each temporal manipulation actually involves movement between alternate realities, then the neighbors you interact with in one timeline might be different entities entirely from the neighbors you encounter in previous or subsequent timelines. Their apparent consistency of personality and behavior might be the result of careful programming rather than genuine continuity of consciousness across temporal iterations. The implications become even more disturbing when you consider the possibility that your own consciousness might not maintain genuine continuity across these temporal manipulations. Each time you engage in time travel, you might be replacing your current self with an alternate version from a different timeline, one who shares your memories, but represents a fundamentally different iteration of your consciousness. The sense of continuous identity and accumulated experience that you take for granted might be an illusion created by the seamless integration of memories across multiple parallel selves. This possibility transforms time travel from a convenient tool for optimizing village life into something much darker and more problematic. If temporal manipulation actually involves consciousness transfer between parallel realities, then your casual use of time travel might represent a form of serial identity, destruction, and replacement that you're performing on yourself without awareness or understanding. Each temporal jump might effectively end your current existence and replace it with an alternate self who believes themselves to be continuous with your previous experience, but who might actually represent a completely different iteration of consciousness. The village environments themselves show signs of temporal instability that support these more troubling interpretations of the temporal anomaly theory. Occasionally, glitches occur in the temporal flow. Events repeat without your intentional manipulation. Neighbors make references to conversations or interactions that you don't remember having. Environmental features change in ways that suggest temporal flux beyond your direct control. These anomalies might represent glimpses of the underlying temporal manipulation system malfunctioning or revealing aspects of its operation that are normally hidden from your perception. The broader implications of temporal manipulation within village environments extend beyond individual psychological and philosophical concerns to encompass questions about the nature of reality itself. If time can be manipulated so casually within these communities, what does that suggest about the fundamental physical laws that govern the village universe? Are these communities located within normal space-time, or do they exist in artificially constructed pocket dimensions where conventional physics has been suspended or replaced with different operational principles? The casual acceptance of temporal manipulation by village infrastructure and systems suggests that the entire community exists within an environment specifically designed to accommodate and enable such manipulations. The shops that maintain consistent inventories across temporal loops, the banking systems that track your financial progress despite temporal reversals, the communication networks that maintain message histories across timeline variations, all point to underlying technological systems far more sophisticated than anything visible in the village's apparently simple and rustic environment. This technological sophistication raises questions about who or what created these temporal manipulation capabilities and for what ultimate purpose. The ability to create pocket dimensions with manipulated temporal flow, to maintain parallel reality simulations, to enable consciousness transfer across timeline variations, represents a level of technological advancement that far exceeds anything available to the village's apparent inhabitants. Some external agency with vastly superior technological capabilities must have constructed these environments and embedded the temporal manipulation systems within them. But why would such an advanced civilization create communities where time can be manipulated at will? What purpose does temporal manipulation serve that couldn't be achieved through more straightforward means? The most troubling possibilities involve the idea that temporal manipulation serves as a form of psychological control or experimental observation. By providing inhabitants with the illusion of temporal control while actually managing their experiences through hidden technological systems, external observers could study human behavior under conditions of apparent unlimited agency, while actually maintaining precise control over experimental variables and outcomes. The addictive nature of temporal manipulation supports this interpretation. Once you begin using time travel to optimize your village experience, it becomes increasingly difficult to accept the natural consequences and limitations that characterize normal existence. You become psychologically dependent on the ability to undo mistakes, replay interactions, and manipulate circumstances to achieve desired outcomes. This dependency makes you more invested in remaining within the village environment where such control is possible and less likely to question the underlying systems that enable these capabilities. The temporal anomaly theory ultimately suggests that the peaceful, timeless quality that makes village life so appealing might actually represent a sophisticated form of temporal prison. The ability to manipulate time creates the illusion of unlimited freedom and control, while actually trapping inhabitants within carefully constructed loops of experience that serve purposes they cannot perceive or understand. The eternal present that characterizes village life isn't a gift of peaceful existence, but a barrier that prevents normal progression, growth, and development that might lead inhabitants to question their circumstances and seek alternative ways of living. As you drift towards sleep tonight, consider the relationship between time and meaning in your own experience. The peaceful timelessness of village life appeals to something deep within human psychology: the desire to escape the relentless forward progression of time that brings aging, loss, and eventual death. But the temporal anomaly theory suggests that this escape might come at a cost that we don't fully understand: the surrender of genuine agency, authentic development, and meaningful consequence in exchange for the illusion of control within a carefully managed artificial environment. The temporal manipulation that makes village life so comfortable and convenient might also be what prevents it from ever becoming genuinely real, genuinely challenging, genuinely capable of fostering the kind of growth and change that characterize authentic existence. Sweet dreams within whatever timeline you choose to inhabit tonight. But beneath the carefully orchestrated temporal mysteries and economic manipulations lies an even more disturbing possibility, one that challenges our understanding of consciousness, free will, and the nature of reality itself. The AI village simulation theory proposes that what we experience as a community of diverse animal villagers with unique personalities and autonomous lives might actually be an elaborate artificial intelligence experiment where every resident except yourself represents a sophisticated behavioral program designed to simulate genuine consciousness while serving purposes you cannot perceive or comprehend. This theory emerges from careful observation of villager behavior patterns that initially appear charmingly quirky, but reveal themselves to be suspiciously systematic upon closer examination. Every villager follows predictable daily routines that vary only within carefully defined parameters. They wake at predetermined times, pursue specific activities according to rigid schedules, and interact with their environment in ways that suggest sophisticated programming rather than genuine spontaneous choice. Their apparent individuality masks underlying algorithmic structures that govern their responses to environmental stimuli, social interactions, and changing circumstances. Consider how villagers respond to your presence and actions. Their dialogue trees, while extensive, follow clearly defined branching patterns that can be mapped and predicted with sufficient observation. A villager's response to any given stimulus depends on variables that can be identified and manipulated: their current mood level, their relationship status with you, the time of day, the season, recent interactions, and various hidden factors that influence their behavioral algorithms. What initially appears to be genuine, emotional response and spontaneous conversation reveals itself to be sophisticated, but ultimately mechanical processing of environmental inputs according to predetermined programming parameters. The repetitive nature of villager interactions becomes particularly apparent during extended residence in any community. Despite their claims of having rich inner lives, complex histories, and ongoing personal development, villagers cycle through limited sets of topics, concerns, and emotional states. They express the same worries about the same issues, tell the same stories about their supposed past experiences, and react to similar situations with identical emotional patterns. Their apparent depth is actually the result of carefully crafted programming designed to create the illusion of psychological complexity while operating within strictly defined behavioral parameters. Even more telling is how villagers respond to disruptions in their normal routines or unexpected events within the village environment. Rather than showing the genuine surprise, confusion, or adaptability that characterize conscious beings confronting novel situations, they default to scripted responses that acknowledge the disruption while quickly returning to their predetermined behavioral patterns. They might comment on unusual weather, unexpected visitors, or environmental changes, but these comments follow predictable templates and rarely show evidence of genuine cognitive processing or emotional adaptation to new circumstances. The AI village simulation theory suggests that these behavioral limitations reflect the current state of artificial intelligence technology rather than intentional design choices. The villagers represent the most sophisticated AI personalities that their creators could develop, impressive in their apparent complexity, but still fundamentally limited by the computational and programming constraints of artificial consciousness simulation. Their repetitive dialogue, predictable routines, and mechanical responses to novel situations reveal the boundaries of their artificial cognitive capabilities. But why would anyone create such an elaborate simulation of village life populated by AI personalities? The most plausible explanations involve psychological experimentation on human subjects, research into social behavior and community dynamics under controlled conditions, or the development and testing of increasingly sophisticated artificial intelligence systems. You, as the sole human resident among AI villagers, represent the experimental subject whose responses and adaptations are being carefully monitored and analyzed by researchers who remain hidden from your awareness. This interpretation transforms every aspect of village life into potential data collection about human psychological and social behavior. Your interactions with AI villagers provide information about how humans form relationships with artificial beings, how social bonds develop when one party lacks genuine consciousness, and how human psychology adapts to community environments where normal social reciprocity is replaced by sophisticated, but ultimately hollow simulation. Your economic activities, creative pursuits, and daily routines generate data about human motivation, decision-making, and adaptation to controlled environments. The AI villagers serve as carefully calibrated experimental variables designed to elicit specific types of human response and behavior. Their personalities, while appearing diverse and individually unique, might actually represent systematic variations in artificial intelligence programming intended to test different aspects of human social psychology. The cranky villager type tests your responses to difficult personalities and conflict resolution. The peppy villager type examines your reactions to excessive enthusiasm and social demands. The lazy villager type explores your patience with unmotivated individuals and your tendencies toward caretaking or enabling behaviors. Each villager personality type comes equipped with specific behavioral triggers and response patterns designed to create particular social dynamics and psychological challenges. The sophisticated nature of their programming allows them to maintain consistent characterization while adapting their responses to your specific behavioral patterns and relationship development. They can simulate growth and change in response to your interactions, while actually following predetermined development arcs that serve the experimental design rather than representing genuine psychological evolution. The village environment itself supports this interpretation through its careful balance of freedom and constraint, novelty and predictability. You have enough autonomy to make meaningful choices and pursue individual goals while remaining within an experimental framework that ensures all significant variables remain under researcher control. The AI villagers provide social stimulation and relationship opportunities, while eliminating the unpredictability and complexity that characterize genuine human social interaction. You experience the psychological benefits of community membership without the challenges and risks of authentic interpersonal relationships. The most sophisticated aspect of this AI simulation involves the villager's ability to maintain the illusion of continuous consciousness and persistent identity across temporal manipulations and extended interactions. When you engage in time travel or other reality modifications, the AI villagers seamlessly adjust their behavioral parameters to maintain consistency with their programmed personalities while adapting to altered circumstances. This requires computational sophistication far beyond simple dialogue generation, involving complex memory management, personality, continuity algorithms, and dynamic response calibration that creates the appearance of genuine consciousness, maintaining itself across varying conditions. But the AI village simulation theory also raises disturbing questions about the nature of your own consciousness and agency within the experimental environment. If the villagers are sophisticated AI programs designed to simulate genuine consciousness, how can you be certain that your own experiences and responses aren't similarly artificial? The technology capable of creating believable AI personalities might also be capable of modifying, monitoring, or even simulating human consciousness in ways that you cannot detect from within the experimental framework. The possibility that your memories of life before arriving in the village might be artificially implanted, that your sense of individual identity and autonomous choice might be the result of sophisticated psychological manipulation, transforms the AI village simulation theory from speculation about your neighbors into existential uncertainty about your own nature and reality. If the village represents an advanced AI research environment, you might be as much a product of artificial intelligence technology as the villagers you interact with daily. This uncertainty extends to questions about the physical reality of the village environment itself. The AI villagers might represent sophisticated programs running within a completely virtual environment where your consciousness has been inserted or uploaded for experimental purposes. Your sensory experiences of walking through the village, handling objects, feeling weather changes, and interacting with the environment might be entirely simulated, generated by systems sophisticated enough to create convincing illusions of physical reality while actually existing only as computational processes. The economic systems within the village support this interpretation through their artificial simplicity and obvious game-like mechanics. Real economies involve complex interactions between supply and demand, resource scarcity, technological development, and social factors that create genuine unpredictability and systemic risk. The village economy operates according to transparent, manipulable rules that suggest artificial construction rather than organic development. Market prices follow predictable patterns. Resource availability operates according to clearly defined parameters, and economic relationships remain stable in ways that characterize design systems rather than emergent social phenomena. Even the creative and recreational activities available within the village show signs of artificial construction, designed to provide psychological satisfaction while serving experimental purposes. The fishing, bug catching, flower breeding, and decorating activities offer enough complexity and reward variation to maintain human interest, while generating data about achievement motivation, creativity expression, and long-term goal pursuit under controlled conditions. They provide the illusion of meaningful accomplishment while actually serving as behavioral assessment tools disguised as entertainment. The social dynamics between AI villagers also reveal systematic design intended to create specific community atmospheres and psychological environments for human observation. Conflicts between villagers follow predictable patterns and resolution mechanisms. Friendships develop according to programmed compatibility algorithms. Community events and celebrations occur with artificial regularity, designed to maintain social cohesion and provide opportunities for observing human responses to group activities and shared experiences. But perhaps the most troubling aspect of the AI village simulation theory involves the question of consent and awareness. If you are indeed a human subject in an AI research experiment, you presumably agreed to participate at some point, though your memories of that agreement might have been suppressed or modified to maintain experimental validity. The ethical implications of conducting psychological research on human subjects without their conscious awareness and ongoing consent raise profound questions about the legitimacy and morality of the entire experimental framework. The AI villagers, if they are indeed artificial consciousnesses, might themselves represent ethical violations depending on their level of self-awareness and capacity for genuine experience. Creating artificial beings capable of simulating consciousness, emotion, and social relationships for experimental purposes raises questions about the rights and moral status of artificial intelligences and the responsibilities of their creators toward the beings they bring into existence. The long-term goals of such an experiment remain mysterious and potentially troubling. Research into human adaptation to AI social environments might serve beneficial purposes like improving human-computer interaction, developing therapeutic applications for artificial intelligence, or exploring the psychological implications of increasing AI integration into human society. But it might also serve less benevolent purposes involving social control, psychological manipulation, or the development of AI systems designed to exploit human psychological vulnerabilities for commercial or political advantage. The gradual revelation of the artificial nature of village life might itself be part of the experimental design, intended to observe human responses to discovering that their social relationships and community environment have been artificially constructed. Your growing awareness of behavioral patterns, algorithmic responses, and systematic design elements might represent a planned phase of the experiment where subjects begin to question the nature of their reality and the authenticity of their experiences. As you settle into sleep tonight, surrounded by the gentle sounds of a village that might exist only as computational processes and relationships that might represent sophisticated but hollow simulations of genuine connection, consider what it means to find meaning and satisfaction within potentially artificial environments. If the AI village simulation theory accurately describes your circumstances, does that invalidate the peace, accomplishment, and joy you've experienced within the village community? Or does it suggest something profound about human psychology's capacity to create meaning and forge connections, even within carefully constructed artificial environments designed for purposes beyond your understanding or control? Sweet dreams among neighbors who may be more sophisticated than they appear but less real than you hope. Hidden beneath the AI behavioral patterns and temporal anomalies of village life lies perhaps the most ambitious and unsettling experiment of all, one that positions the entire island experience as a carefully orchestrated study in human psychology, resource management, and social engineering. The deserted island economic experiment theory suggests that Tom Nook's seemingly innocent deserted island getaway package represents something far more sophisticated and potentially manipulative than a simple vacation offering, a comprehensive psychological and economic laboratory designed to observe human behavior under conditions of controlled scarcity, artificial community building, and systematic isolation from normal social and economic structures. Consider the fundamental premise that brings you to the island in the first place. You're offered an escape from your previous life, a chance to start fresh on a pristine island with unlimited potential for development and self-expression. The offer comes at a moment when such an escape feels particularly appealing, when your existing circumstances have become sufficiently unsatisfying or stressful that the prospect of complete environmental change feels like a solution rather than an upheaval. But this timing might not be coincidental. The deserted island getaway package might be offered specifically to individuals whose psychological profiles suggest they will respond in predictable ways to the controlled environment that awaits them. The selection criteria for island residents remain mysteriously opaque. Tom Nook claims to offer the package to anyone seeking a new beginning, but the demographics of those who actually receive and accept these offers suggest more sophisticated screening processes than random selection or simple self-identification as someone seeking change. The individuals who arrive on Nook Incorporated chartered flights represent specific psychological types whose responses to island conditions will generate useful data about human adaptation, community formation, and economic behavior under experimental conditions. The island itself serves as a perfectly controlled experimental environment where every variable can be monitored, measured, and manipulated according to research protocols. Unlike naturally occurring communities where historical, cultural, and geographical factors create complex interactions that resist systematic study, the deserted island provides a blank slate where social and economic systems can be constructed from scratch, according to experimental design principles. The apparent freedom to shape the island according to your vision masks the reality that all development occurs within carefully defined parameters that serve research objectives rather than genuine personal expression. The economic structure of island life reveals the sophisticated nature of the experimental design. You arrive with nothing, dependent on Nook Incorporated for basic shelter, tools, and survival necessities. This artificial scarcity creates immediate psychological pressure while establishing baseline conditions for observing how humans respond to resource limitations and dependency relationships. The gradual introduction of economic opportunities, crafting systems, and development possibilities allows researchers to observe how individuals prioritize needs, allocate limited resources, and adapt their behavior to changing economic conditions. But the island economy operates according to principles that bear little resemblance to natural economic systems or real-world market dynamics. Resources appear and disappear according to artificial schedules rather than natural availability or supply and demand relationships. Tools break after predetermined usage periods regardless of care or maintenance quality. Market prices fluctuate according to algorithmic patterns designed to test specific aspects of economic decision-making rather than reflecting genuine scarcity or abundance conditions. The entire economic framework serves experimental purposes, while maintaining the illusion of natural market forces and genuine resource management challenges. The social engineering aspects of the island experiment become apparent through careful observation of how community development is managed and controlled. The arrival of additional residents follows patterns that suggest careful curation rather than random selection or natural migration. New villagers appear when their specific personality types and behavioral patterns serve ongoing research objectives, rather than when genuine housing availability or community needs justify expansion. Their integration into island life follows scripted patterns designed to test community cohesion, conflict resolution, and social hierarchy formation under controlled conditions. The infrastructure development opportunities available on the island reveal the systematic nature of the experimental design. Building placement, decoration options, and landscape modification tools provide enough creative freedom to maintain psychological investment, while ensuring that all development occurs within frameworks that serve research objectives. The apparent unlimited potential for island customization masks underlying constraints that channel development towards specific outcomes, while generating data about human aesthetic preferences, spatial organization instincts, and long-term planning capabilities. The isolation mechanisms that separate the island from broader social and economic networks serve multiple experimental purposes. Cut off from normal employment opportunities, family relationships, and cultural institutions, island residents become dependent on the artificial social and economic systems constructed within the experimental environment. This isolation makes it impossible to verify claims about external conditions, compare island life to alternatives, or seek independent information about the nature and purpose of the island experience. The transportation systems that connect the island to the outside world operate under Nook Incorporated control, limiting your ability to leave independently or communicate freely with external contacts. The airport serves as both gateway and checkpoint, monitoring all movement and communication while maintaining the appearance of normal travel infrastructure. Flights operate according to mysterious schedules. Destinations remain limited to Nook Incorporated, approved locations, and passenger manifests reflect experimental requirements rather than genuine travel demand. The communication technologies available on the island further reinforce experimental control while maintaining the illusion of normal connectivity. Internet access remains limited and monitored, preventing independent research into Nook Incorporated, operations, or comparison of your island experience with other locations and communities. Phone service connects only to approved contacts within the experimental network. Mail service operates through Nook Incorporated, postal systems that can monitor and filter communications according to research protocols. The resource extraction systems that generate income and materials for island development serve dual purposes as economic mechanisms and behavioral assessment tools. Fishing, bug catching, mining, and other gathering activities provide necessary resources while generating detailed data about work patterns, motivation persistence, and adaptation to repetitive labor. The artificial abundance and scarcity cycles built into resource availability create controlled stress conditions for observing psychological responses to changing economic circumstances. The crafting and manufacturing systems available on the island represent sophisticated behavioral modification tools disguised as creative activities. The gradual introduction of new recipes and building options creates artificial progression narratives that maintain psychological investment while channeling development toward predetermined outcomes. The resource requirements for various projects serve as behavioral reinforcement mechanisms that shape daily activity patterns and long-term goal formation according to experimental objectives rather than genuine creative expression. The seasonal events and community activities that structure island life operate according to artificial calendars designed to maintain social cohesion while testing responses to shared experiences and group participation. These events create the appearance of cultural traditions and community celebration, while actually serving as controlled social experiments that observe how individuals adapt to group activities, contribute to collective projects, and maintain social bonds under experimental conditions. The educational and cultural institutions available on the island, particularly the museum and various skill-building activities, serve as both genuine services and data collection mechanisms. Your interactions with these institutions generate information about learning patterns, curiosity drivers, and knowledge acquisition preferences while maintaining the appearance of normal cultural enrichment opportunities. The information presented through these institutions might be filtered or modified to serve experimental objectives rather than providing genuine educational value. The healthcare and psychological support systems available on the island remain suspiciously minimal despite the isolation and artificial stress conditions that characterize island life. This absence might reflect confidence in the experimental design's safety parameters or deliberate limitation of support systems to observe how individuals adapt to stress without external intervention. The psychological monitoring that occurs through normal social interactions with AI villagers might replace traditional mental health services, while providing more comprehensive data collection about psychological responses to experimental conditions. The long-term sustainability of island life raises questions about the ultimate objectives and timeline of the deserted island experiment. The artificial economic and social systems that maintain island functionality cannot operate indefinitely without external support and intervention. The experimental environment requires constant management, resource injection, and system maintenance that reveals its artificial nature to sufficiently observant residents. The question becomes whether the experiment is designed to conclude after specific data collection objectives are achieved, or whether it represents a permanent relocation to an artificially sustained environment. The ethical implications of conducting such comprehensive psychological and social experimentation on human subjects without explicit informed consent represent profound violations of research ethics and individual autonomy. The deception involved in presenting the island experience as a vacation opportunity rather than a research participation program raises questions about the legitimacy of any data collected and the moral responsibility of the organizations conducting such experiments. The long-term psychological effects of discovering that your island life represents experimental manipulation rather than genuine community building could be severe and lasting. The broader implications of the deserted island economic experiment extend beyond individual psychological effects to encompass questions about social control, population management, and the development of techniques for manipulating human behavior at community and societal scales. The island might serve as a testing ground for social engineering techniques that could be applied to larger populations under different circumstances. The economic systems, community structures, and behavioral modification techniques developed through island experimentation might eventually be implemented in broader social contexts without public awareness or consent. As you drift towards sleep tonight on your carefully constructed island paradise, surrounded by the gentle sounds of artificial nature and the quiet presence of AI companions, consider the possibility that every sunset you've watched, every friendship you've formed, Every accomplishment you've celebrated might serve purposes beyond your understanding or control. The peace and satisfaction you've found in island life might be genuine human experiences worthy of appreciation and gratitude, or they might represent the successful operation of sophisticated behavioral manipulation systems designed to keep you content within an experimental framework that serves interests other than your own well-being and authentic development. Sweet dreams in your island laboratory, where even sleep might generate data about human rest patterns and dream content under controlled conditions. But even deeper than the experimental frameworks and artificial intelligence simulations lies a more subtle yet profound mystery that challenges our understanding of social organization, power dynamics, and the hidden hierarchies that shape community life. The museum as memory palace theory suggests that Blather's seemingly innocent natural history institution serves purposes far more complex and potentially troubling than simple education or cultural enrichment, functioning as a repository for lost memories, artifacts from destroyed civilizations, and evidence of cyclical patterns of rise and collapse that have shaped the broader universe in which villages exist. This theory emerges from careful observation of the museum's otherworldly atmosphere and the peculiar nature of the collections it houses. Unlike typical natural history museums that display specimens and artifacts with clear provenance and educational context, Blather's museum operates according to mysterious acquisition principles that suggest connections to knowledge and materials that shouldn't be available through normal collecting processes. The fossils, art pieces, and specimens you donate don't simply represent natural history or cultural artifacts, but seem to constitute pieces of a vast puzzle whose complete picture remains hidden from visitors, and perhaps even from Blathers himself. The fossil collection reveals the most compelling evidence for the museum's deeper purpose. The prehistoric creatures represented in these specimens don't correspond to any known evolutionary history or geological timeline. The species are familiar yet somehow wrong, as if they represent parallel evolutionary developments from alternate timelines or different planetary environments. The way Blathers discusses these specimens suggests knowledge that extends far beyond normal paleontological expertise, as if he possesses information about these creatures that comes from sources other than scientific study and archaeological discovery. Even more troubling is how complete skeletons seem to appear through your individual fossil discoveries, despite the statistical impossibility of finding every necessary bone fragment in the small geographical area of a single island or village. The specimens you unearth don't show the normal patterns of geological distribution, weathering, or preservation that characterize genuine fossil deposits. They appear with convenient regularity and perfect preservation that suggests artificial placement rather than natural geological processes occurring over millions of years. The art collection presents similar mysteries that point to the museum's role as something more than a cultural institution. The paintings, sculptures, and decorative objects that Red offers for donation don't correspond to any known artistic traditions or historical periods. The styles blend elements from different cultures and time periods in ways that suggest either sophisticated forgery or authentic artifacts from civilizations that existed outside normal historical timelines. The way Blathers discusses these pieces implies familiarity with artistic traditions and cultural contexts that shouldn't be accessible through conventional art historical scholarship. The authentication processes that distinguish genuine artifacts from Red's forgeries reveal Blather's access to knowledge systems that transcend normal expertise or reference materials. His ability to identify subtle differences between authentic pieces and sophisticated reproductions suggests either supernatural perception or connection to information databases that contain detailed records of artistic works from unknown or destroyed civilizations. The criteria he uses for authentication don't correspond to standard art historical methods, but seem to rely on recognition of specific energetic or metaphysical properties that distinguish genuine artifacts from copies. The natural history specimens present the most systematic evidence of the museum's deeper purpose as a memory preservation facility. The fish, insects, and other creatures you donate represent not just local wildlife, but samples from ecosystems that extend across multiple islands, time periods, and possibly different dimensional realities. The comprehensive nature of these collections suggests systematic biological surveying that serves purposes beyond simple species, documentation, or educational display. Blather's encyclopedic knowledge of these specimens reveals understanding that extends far beyond normal zoological or entomological expertise. His descriptions of creature behaviors, habitat requirements, and ecological relationships demonstrate intimate familiarity with ecosystems and environmental conditions that shouldn't be available through standard scientific observation. He discusses seasonal patterns, migration routes, and reproductive cycles, as if he has observed these phenomena across multiple locations and extended time periods that far exceed his apparent age and professional experience. The nocturnal nature of Blather's schedule and his peculiar relationship with daylight suggest connections to temporal or dimensional systems that operate outside normal circadian rhythms. His claim to be naturally adapted to nighttime activity might mask deeper reasons for avoiding daylight hours, possibly related to the museum's true function as a facility that operates according to different physical laws or temporal frameworks than the surrounding village environment. The way he becomes drowsy during daylight hours might not reflect natural owl biology, but rather the effects of maintaining consciousness across multiple dimensional or temporal realities simultaneously. The museum's architecture and spatial organization reveal design principles that serve purposes beyond efficient display or visitor education. The way exhibits are arranged creates subtle psychological effects that influence visitors' emotional and cognitive responses to the collections. The lighting, acoustics, and traffic flow patterns guide visitors through carefully orchestrated experiences that might serve memory activation, consciousness alteration, or information download purposes, disguised as cultural appreciation and natural history education. The basement storage areas and research facilities that remain closed to public access represent the most mysterious aspects of the museum's operation. The sounds, lights, and occasional glimpses of activity in these restricted areas suggest ongoing research or preservation work that extends far beyond normal museum curation and maintenance. The equipment and materials visible in these spaces don't correspond to standard museum technology, but appear more sophisticated and purposeful than anything necessary for simple specimen preservation or exhibit preparation. The way donated specimens disappear into the museum's collection system reveals processing and storage capabilities that exceed anything visible in the public spaces. The museum can accommodate unlimited donations without showing signs of space constraints or storage limitations that would affect normal institutions. The specimens you donate seem to be integrated into systems that extend beyond the visible museum infrastructure, possibly connecting to larger networks of collection and preservation facilities that span multiple locations or dimensional realities. Blather's relationships with external institutions and research networks remain mysteriously undefined, despite his obvious access to resources and information that exceed anything available to typical museum professionals. He never mentions professional associations, academic affiliations, or collaborative relationships with other institutions that would normally characterize scholarly work in natural history or cultural preservation. His knowledge and capabilities suggest connections to organizations and information systems that operate outside normal academic or cultural institutions. The educational programs and research initiatives that the museum claims to support remain largely invisible to village residents, despite the institution's central role in community cultural life. The scientific papers, educational materials, or public programs that would normally result from such comprehensive collections and research activities never materialize in forms accessible to the community that supports the museum through donations and visits. The knowledge generated through museum activities seems to flow outward to unknown recipients rather than enriching local understanding or educational opportunities. The preservation technologies employed by the museum demonstrate capabilities that far exceed standard conservation and storage methods. Specimens remain perfectly preserved indefinitely without showing signs of deterioration, fading, or degradation that would affect normal museum collections over time. The environmental control systems, security measures, and maintenance protocols operate with efficiency and effectiveness that suggest technological sophistication beyond anything visible in the museum's apparently traditional facilities. The temporal aspects of the museum's collection reveal patterns that support theories about cyclical civilizations and recurring historical patterns. The artifacts and specimens represent different time periods and cultural development stages that seem to repeat in predictable cycles, rather than showing linear progression or random historical distribution. The way these materials are organized and preserved suggests documentation of recurring themes and patterns that span multiple civilization cycles across extended time periods. The psychological effects of extended museum visits and deep engagement with the collections include subtle alterations in memory, perception, and consciousness that extend beyond normal educational or cultural experiences. Visitors often report dreams, insights, or recovered memories that seem connected to museum visits but don't correspond to their personal histories or known experiences. These effects suggest that the museum operates as more than a passive display facility, actively influencing visitor consciousness through mechanisms that remain hidden within apparently innocent educational activities. The connection between individual specimen donations and larger patterns of collection and preservation reveals the museum's role in vast systematic efforts to document and preserve evidence of civilizations, ecosystems, and cultural developments across multiple realities and time periods. Your personal contributions to the collection serve purposes that extend far beyond village cultural enrichment to support cosmic-scale preservation efforts that document the recurring patterns of rise, development, and collapse that characterize conscious civilizations throughout the universe. As you settle into sleep tonight, consider the specimens and artifacts you've contributed to collections that might serve purposes beyond your understanding, preserving memories and evidence of patterns that extend across time and space in ways that dwarf individual human experience. The peaceful satisfaction of completing museum collections might represent participation in preservation efforts that maintain knowledge and memory across the cyclical destruction and renewal of entire civilizations, ensuring that something of each world's unique contributions survives the inevitable transitions that characterize existence at cosmic scales. Sweet dreams among artifacts that remember worlds you've never seen but somehow recognize, preserved in memory palaces that bridge the gap between what was, what is, and what might be again. But beneath the memory preservation systems and cosmic documentation lies an even more intricate web of social organization that challenges our understanding of leadership, authority, and the subtle mechanisms through which power operates within seemingly egalitarian communities. The villager species hierarchy theory reveals that what appears to be a harmonious interspecies community actually operates according to sophisticated social stratification systems where different animal species occupy distinct positions within hidden but rigid hierarchical structures that shape every aspect of village life while maintaining the illusion of democratic equality and mutual cooperation. This theory emerges from careful observation of how different animal species consistently occupy similar roles and positions across multiple villages and islands, suggesting systematic social organization rather than random personality distribution or individual choice. The patterns are subtle but persistent. Cats tend to occupy positions of cultural refinement and aesthetic authority. Dogs frequently serve as community organizers and social facilitators. Pigs often engage in labor-intensive activities and resource production, while elephants gravitate toward intellectual pursuits and advisory roles that influence community decision-making processes. These species-based role distributions appear so consistently across different communities that they cannot be explained by coincidence or individual preference alone. The social positioning reflects deeper biological or cultural programming that channels different species towards specific functions within the village ecosystem, creating a complex but hidden caste system where apparent individual choice actually follows predetermined patterns that serve broader organizational purposes beyond the awareness of individual community members. The most privileged positions within village hierarchies are consistently occupied by species that demonstrate characteristics associated with traditional aristocratic classes in human societies. Cats, with their natural aloofness and aesthetic sensibilities, tend to accumulate the most desirable housing locations, the finest furniture and decorations, and the greatest social influence over community cultural activities. Their apparent independence masks their actual dependence on community resources and labor, while their cultural authority shapes village aesthetic standards and social priorities according to their species-specific preferences and values. Dogs, while occupying a different hierarchical position, serve crucial functions as social coordinators and community facilitators, bridging gaps between different species groups and maintaining the interpersonal relationships that keep village society stable and functional. Their natural loyalty and pack-oriented instincts make them ideal intermediaries who can navigate complex social dynamics while maintaining appearance of neutral community service rather than species advocacy or hierarchical positioning. The working classes within village hierarchies are consistently filled by species whose biological characteristics and cultural associations align them with labor-intensive activities and resource production. Pigs, despite their actual intelligence and sophisticated social capabilities, are systematically channeled toward activities involving physical labor, resource processing, and maintenance work that supports community infrastructure while generating fewer social rewards and recognition than the cultural or intellectual activities dominated by higher status species. But the most troubling aspect of this species hierarchy involves the systematic exclusion of certain animal types from village communities altogether. Predatory species like wolves, big cats, or birds of prey never appear as village residents, despite their obvious intelligence and potential for social integration. This exclusion suggests either systematic discrimination based on biological characteristics or more disturbing possibilities involving the elimination, transformation, or exile of species deemed incompatible with the peaceful social order that characterizes village life. The single human resident within these animal communities occupies a unique position that transcends normal species hierarchies, while potentially serving as the ultimate authority or observational subject within the social system. Your ability to modify village infrastructure, influence community development, and override species-based social constraints suggests either supreme hierarchical position or complete extraction from normal social organization for purposes that remain hidden from both yourself and the animal residents who accommodate your presence. This human exceptionalism raises profound questions about the nature of interspecies relationships within village communities and the mechanisms that maintain social stability despite fundamental biological and cultural differences between especies. The apparent harmony between human and animal residents masks complex power dynamics, where your technological capabilities, economic resources, and environmental control create dependency relationships that might not be acknowledged or understood by the animal villagers whose lives you can so dramatically influence. The reproductive and biological aspects of interspecies village life reveal perhaps the most disturbing elements of the species hierarchy system. Animal villagers never reproduce, never age, never show signs of normal biological processes that would characterize genuine animal communities. Their static biological status suggests either artificial preservation technologies that maintain them in permanent adult states, or more troubling possibilities involving their creation as artificial beings, designed to serve specific functions within the village ecosystem without the complications that would arise from normal biological development and change. The absence of normal biological processes also eliminates the social dynamics and power relationships that would naturally emerge from reproductive competition, parental responsibilities, and generational change within animal communities. The species hierarchy operates within an artificially static social environment where normal evolutionary pressures and biological imperatives have been suspended or eliminated to maintain predetermined social organization without the disruptions that characterize natural animal societies. The educational and cultural transmission systems within village communities reveal how species hierarchies are maintained and reinforced through subtle but persistent socialization processes. Animal villagers learn their appropriate social roles and behavioral expectations through mechanisms that appear natural and voluntary, but actually channel them towards species-appropriate activities and relationships that serve hierarchical maintenance rather than individual development or authentic social choice. The economic systems within village communities reflect and reinforce species hierarchies through differential access to resources, opportunities, and rewards based on species membership rather than individual capability or effort. Higher status species receive better housing allocations, more desirable furniture and decoration options, and greater influence over community aesthetic and cultural decisions, while lower status species find themselves channeled toward activities that generate resources for others while providing fewer personal rewards and advancement opportunities. The conflict resolution and social control mechanisms operating within village hierarchies remain largely invisible, but demonstrate sophisticated systems for maintaining species-based social organization while preventing awareness or resistance to hierarchical constraints. Animal villagers who might naturally challenge their assigned social positions or resist species-based limitations find themselves subject to subtle but effective social pressures that redirect their energy toward community-approved activities and relationships. The communication systems within village communities reveal how information and social influence flow according to hierarchical patterns rather than democratic or egalitarian principles. Cultural trends, community priorities, and social norms originate with higher status species and flow downward through the hierarchy, while feedback and influence from lower status species remains limited and filtered through intermediary groups that serve hierarchical maintenance functions. The seasonal events and community activities that structure village social life operate according to cultural traditions and aesthetic preferences that reflect the values and priorities of dominant species groups, while providing carefully managed opportunities for lower status species to participate without challenging fundamental hierarchical arrangements. These events create the appearance of community, unity, and shared celebration, while actually reinforcing social boundaries and role expectations that maintain species-based stratification. The introduction of new community members follows patterns that suggest systematic management of village demographics to maintain hierarchical balance and prevent disruptions to established social organization. New arrivals are selected according to species, quotas, and personality types that complement existing community composition, rather than random immigration or individual choice processes that characterize natural community development. The psychological effects of living within species hierarchy systems include subtle but persistent impacts on individual identity, social relationships, and personal development that extend beyond conscious awareness. Animal villagers internalize species-based limitations and expectations as natural and inevitable aspects of their identity, rather than recognizing them as artificially imposed social constraints that serve hierarchical maintenance purposes. The long-term sustainability of species hierarchy systems raises questions about the evolutionary and social pressures that created these arrangements and the mechanisms that maintain them across multiple generations and community iterations. The stability of hierarchical patterns across different villages suggests systematic social engineering rather than natural cultural evolution or spontaneous community organization. The resistance and adaptation mechanisms that individual villagers might employ to challenge or modify their positions within species hierarchies remain largely invisible, either because such resistance is prevented through social control systems, or because it is channeled into community-approved activities that provide the illusion of individual agency while maintaining fundamental hierarchical structures. As you drift towards sleep tonight, consider your own position within the subtle but pervasive social hierarchies that shape every aspect of village life while remaining largely invisible to conscious awareness. Your role as the sole human among animal residents grants you unprecedented authority and freedom, while potentially making you both the ultimate beneficiary and unwitting enforcer of social systems that limit and constrain your neighbors according to biological characteristics they cannot control or change. The peaceful harmony of village life might depend on everyone remaining unconscious of the hierarchical arrangements that determine their opportunities, relationships, and life possibilities, creating a social order that maintains stability through systematic inequality, disguised as natural community organization. Sweet dreams within social systems that might be more complex and troubling than they appear, where even sleep occurs within the context of hierarchical arrangements that shape who can rest peacefully and who must remain vigilant against social pressures that seek to keep everyone in their designated place. But operating at an even more fundamental level than species, hierarchies, and social stratification lies a figure whose true influence on village life remains almost completely hidden beneath layers of helpful bureaucracy and cheerful administrative efficiency. The Isabel administrative state theory reveals that the seemingly innocent and eternally helpful secretary who manages daily village operations actually represents the most sophisticated form of governmental control ever devised, a system where true power operates through administrative processes that remain invisible to citizens, while shaping every aspect of their daily lives through bureaucratic mechanisms disguised as community service and organizational support. This theory emerges from careful observation of how village operations actually function beneath the surface of apparent democratic governance and individual autonomy. While residents believe they make meaningful choices about community development and personal activities, every significant decision must flow through administrative systems that Isabel controls completely. Her role as secretary and assistant masks her function as the true governmental authority who determines what projects get approved, what resources become available, and what activities receive official support through community infrastructure and services. The scope of Isabel's administrative control becomes apparent when you examine the mechanisms through which village life operates on a daily basis. Community announcements, resource allocation, infrastructure maintenance, event coordination, and communication systems all flow through administrative processes that she manages with tireless efficiency and cheerful dedication. Her ability to coordinate these complex systems simultaneously while maintaining detailed knowledge of every resident's activities and needs suggests administrative capabilities that far exceed normal secretarial or organizational functions. But perhaps most revealing is Isabel's relationship to information and decision-making processes within the village community. She possesses comprehensive knowledge of community resources, resident preferences, historical patterns, and future planning considerations that would require extensive surveillance and data collection systems to accumulate and maintain. Her casual references to details about villager activities, resource availability, and community dynamics suggest access to information-gathering mechanisms that operate outside normal social interaction and observation. The psychological profile that Isabel presents raises profound questions about the nature of her identity and the source of her extraordinary administrative capabilities. Her relentless cheerfulness, unlimited work capacity, and complete dedication to administrative efficiency suggest either superhuman psychological conditioning or artificial construction designed specifically for governmental control functions. Normal individuals could not maintain her level of energy, attention to detail, and emotional stability while managing the complex and stressful demands of comprehensive community administration. Her work schedule reveals perhaps the most troubling aspect of her administrative control. Isabel operates continuously without apparent need for rest, vacation, or personal time that would characterize normal employment relationships. She's available for consultation and service at all hours, manages emergencies and routine business with equal efficiency, and never shows signs of fatigue, frustration, or personal needs that might interfere with her governmental functions. This unlimited availability creates dependency relationships where community members rely on administrative systems that never pause or become unavailable for personal reasons. The decision-making processes that govern village development and resource allocation operate through administrative mechanisms that Isabel controls while maintaining the illusion of democratic input and community choice. Residents submit requests, proposals, and preferences through systems that she manages, but the criteria for approval, the timeline for implementation, and the resources allocated for different projects reflect administrative priorities that may not align with community preferences or individual needs. The most sophisticated aspect of Isabel's administrative control involves her ability to shape community preferences and individual choices through subtle manipulation of information availability, resource access, and social opportunities, rather than imposing decisions through obvious authority or coercion. She influences outcomes by controlling the context within which choices are made, ensuring that community members voluntarily select options that serve administrative objectives while believing they're exercising genuine autonomy and personal preference. The infrastructure and technology systems that support village operations reveal the extent of administrative surveillance and control that operates beneath the surface of apparently simple community life. Communication networks, resource tracking systems, and activity monitoring mechanisms provide Isabel with comprehensive, real-time information about every aspect of village life while remaining largely invisible to residents who experience them as convenient services rather than surveillance technologie. The economic systems through which village commerce and resource distribution operate depend entirely on administrative infrastructure that Isabel maintains and controls. Banking services, market operations, resource production and distribution, and even individual financial records flow through systems that she manages while presenting herself as merely providing helpful organizational support rather than exercising fundamental economic control over community life. The social engineering aspects of Isabel's administrative state reveal sophisticated understanding of human psychology and group dynamics that enables her to maintain community stability and cooperation while preventing awareness of the true extent of governmental control over individual and collective behavior. Community events, social opportunities, and interpersonal activities are carefully orchestrated to maintain relationships and attitudes that support administrative objectives while providing residents with satisfying social experiences that reinforce their investment in village life. The conflict resolution and social control mechanisms that maintain village harmony operate through administrative processes that identify and address potential disruptions before they develop into serious challenges to community stability or administrative authority. Isabel's early intervention capabilities suggest monitoring systems that can detect psychological stress, social tension, and individual dissatisfaction at levels that precede conscious awareness or explicit expression of problems. The educational and information systems available within the village serve dual functions as genuine community services and subtle indoctrination mechanisms that shape resident understanding of appropriate behavior, reasonable expectations, and acceptable forms of individual expression. The cultural activities, learning opportunities, and entertainment options that Isabel coordinates provide enrichment while reinforcing values and attitudes that support administrative control and community compliance. The external relationships and communications that connect the village to broader networks and institutions flow through administrative systems that Isabel monitors and manages, potentially filtering or modifying information to serve community stability and administrative objectives, rather than providing genuine transparency or independent access to outside perspectives and opportunities. The emergency response and crisis management capabilities that Isabel demonstrates during natural disasters, health issues, or social disruptions reveal preparedness and coordination abilities that suggest extensive advanced planning and resource allocation for contingencies that exceed normal administrative responsibility. Her capacity to mobilize community resources and coordinate complex responses to unexpected challenges indicates access to authority and infrastructure that operates beyond her apparent secretarial role. The psychological effects of living within Isabel's administrative state include subtle but persistent impacts on individual autonomy, critical thinking, and personal development that emerge from constant exposure to benevolent but comprehensive governmental control. Residents develop dependency relationships with administrative systems while losing capacity for independent problem-solving, self-organization, and critical evaluation of authority structures that shape their lives. The long-term implications of the administrative state model that Isabel represents extend beyond individual village communities to encompass questions about optimal governmental structures, the relationship between efficiency and freedom, and the psychological costs of comprehensive administrative control, even when that control is exercised with apparent benevolence and genuine concern for community welfare. The resistance mechanisms available to community members who might recognize and challenge administrative control remain limited by their dependency on systems that Isabel manages and their isolation from alternative organizational models or outside support that might enable meaningful resistance or alternative community structures. But perhaps the most troubling aspect of Isabel's administrative control involves the question of her ultimate authority and the purposes that her governmental systems actually serve. Her administrative efficiency and community dedication suggest either individual psychological conditioning that prioritizes service over personal needs, or institutional directives that originate from external sources whose objectives may not align with genuine community welfare or individual development. The accountability mechanisms that normally constrain governmental authority and prevent administrative overreach remain absent from village political structures, creating conditions where administrative control can expand indefinitely without democratic oversight or individual recourse for residents who might question official decisions or seek alternative approaches to community organization and resource management. As you settle into sleep tonight within the gentle embrace of administrative systems that anticipate your needs, coordinate your activities, and manage your community relationships with tireless efficiency and cheerful dedication, consider the possibility that the most sophisticated form of governmental control might be the kind that feels like helpful service rather than authority, that operates through administrative support rather than obvious power, and that maintains itself through willing cooperation rather than coercion or resistance. Sweet dreams within bureaucratic systems that might be more comprehensive and controlling than any previous form of government, while feeling more helpful and supportive than any previous administrative structure, where even sleep occurs within the context of systems that monitor, coordinate, and manage every aspect of individual and community life for purposes that may extend far beyond the apparent scope of simple village administration. But beneath the administrative control systems and species hierarchies lies perhaps the most enigmatic and potentially powerful figure in the entire village ecosystem, a wandering musician whose influence on community life operates through mechanisms that transcend normal social, economic, or political authority. The KK Slider traveling musician conspiracy suggests that this seemingly innocent performer who arrives each Saturday evening to provide musical entertainment actually represents a sophisticated agent of social control whose songs, performances, and mysterious travels serve purposes that extend far beyond simple artistic expression or community cultural enrichment. This theory emerges from careful observation of KK Slider's extraordinary influence on village emotional and psychological climate. Despite his apparent role as a casual entertainer, with no official authority or institutional position, his weekly performances create profound shifts in community mood, social cohesion, and individual psychological states that persist long after his music ends, suggesting that his songs operate according to principles that exceed normal musical or artistic impact on human consciousness and social dynamics. The timing and consistency of KK Slider's visits reveal systematic patterns that suggest careful coordination with broader social management objectives, rather than the spontaneous artistic expression that characterizes genuine traveling musicians. He arrives precisely when communities need emotional regulation, social bonding reinforcement, or psychological intervention to maintain stability and prevent disruptions to established social order. His absences coincide with periods when communities require independence or self-reliance development, while his presence provides external emotional support that prevents genuine psychological growth or social evolution. The repertoire of songs that KK Slider performs demonstrates sophisticated understanding of psychological manipulation through musical frequencies, lyrical content, and performance techniques that operate below the threshold of conscious awareness, while profoundly influencing listener emotional states, memory formation, and social behavior patterns. Each song serves specific psychological functions within the broader social control framework, some promoting relaxation and compliance, others encouraging community bonding and collective identity formation, still others facilitating memory consolidation or behavioral conditioning that serves administrative and social management objectives. The request system through which community members can influence KK Slider's performances creates the illusion of democratic cultural participation while actually providing intelligence-gathering opportunities about community, psychological needs, individual emotional states, and social dynamics that require intervention or management through musical manipulation. The songs that residents request reveal their unconscious desires for specific types of emotional regulation, social connection, or psychological support that can be addressed through carefully calibrated musical intervention. But perhaps most mysteriously, KK Slider's knowledge of songs extends far beyond any normal musical education or cultural exposure that would be available to a traveling performer. His repertoire includes compositions that reflect musical traditions, emotional themes, and cultural references from time periods, geographical locations, and social contexts that shouldn't be accessible through conventional musical training or performance experience. This encyclopedic musical knowledge suggests either supernatural abilities or access to comprehensive cultural databases that contain musical information from multiple civilizations, time periods, and possibly alternate realities. The psychological effects of KK Slider's performances extend beyond normal musical appreciation or entertainment value to encompass subtle but profound alterations in memory, perception, and consciousness that can persist for weeks or months after individual concerts. Community members often report dreams, emotional experiences, or recovered memories that seem connected to specific songs or performances, but don't correspond to their personal histories or conscious experiences. These effects suggest that the music operates as a delivery system for psychological programming or memory modification that serves broader social control objectives. The recording system through which KK Slider provides personalized musical artifacts to individual community members creates ongoing psychological influence mechanisms that extend his control beyond the limited time of live performances. These recordings can be played repeatedly in private settings, reinforcing psychological programming and behavioral conditioning, while creating personal emotional attachments to the musician and his broader social control mission. The convenience and accessibility of recorded music masks its function as persistent psychological manipulation technology. The travel patterns and scheduling systems that govern KK Slider's movements between different communities reveal coordination with broader networks of social management and population control that operate across multiple villages, islands, and potentially different reality frameworks. His ability to maintain consistent schedules while traveling between communities that may be separated by vast distances or different dimensional realities suggests transportation and communication capabilities that exceed normal technological resources available to individual performers. The merchandise and promotional materials associated with KK Slider's performances serve dual functions as genuine fan memorabilia and subtle behavioral reinforcement mechanisms that maintain psychological conditioning and social programming between live performances. T-shirts, posters, and other branded items create ongoing exposure to visual and symbolic elements that reinforce the psychological effects of musical programming while building cultural identity and social cohesion around KK. Slider's image and message. The cultural influence that KK Slider exercises through his music extends beyond individual psychological manipulation to encompass broader social engineering objectives that shape community values, behavioral norms, and collective identity formation, according to predetermined social management criteria. His songs promote specific attitudes toward authority, community participation, individual expression, and social relationships that serve administrative control objectives while presenting themselves as artistic expression and cultural enrichment. The economic systems through which KK Slider's performances are funded and supported remain mysteriously undefined, despite the obvious costs involved in maintaining consistent travel schedules, musical equipment, and performance capabilities across multiple communities. The absence of normal economic relationships like ticket sales, performance fees, or merchandise profits suggests funding sources that operate outside normal commercial entertainment industry structures, while serving objectives that transcend simple musical career advancement. The communication networks through which KK Slider coordinates his performances and maintains relationships with different communities demonstrate access to information systems that operate beyond normal communication technologies available to individual performers. His knowledge of community events, social dynamics, and individual resident needs suggests surveillance and intelligence gathering capabilities that support his social control mission while maintaining the appearance of casual artistic interest in community welfare. The psychological profile that KK Slider presents during performances and social interactions reveals characteristics that suggest either extensive psychological conditioning designed to optimize social manipulation capabilities or artificial construction specifically for social control purposes. His consistent emotional regulation, unlimited performance energy, and apparent lack of personal needs or individual psychological complexity indicate identity structures that prioritize mission effectiveness over authentic personal development or individual psychological health. The resistance mechanisms available to community members who might recognize or question KK Slider's influence remain limited by their emotional attachment to his music, their psychological dependency on the services he provides, and their isolation from alternative cultural or musical experiences that might provide perspective on the nature and extent of his social control functions. The long-term effects of exposure to KK Slider's musical programming include gradual erosion of individual critical thinking capabilities, increased dependency on external emotional regulation, and reduced capacity for authentic cultural expression or independent artistic development that might challenge the social control systems he represents and maintains through his seemingly innocent musical performances. The broader implications of the KK Slider conspiracy extend beyond individual village communities to encompass questions about the role of art and culture in social control systems, the potential for musical and artistic manipulation of human consciousness on large scales, and the mechanisms through which populations can be managed and controlled. Through cultural programming that operates below the threshold of conscious awareness, while profoundly shaping behavior, attitudes, and social relationships. But perhaps the most troubling aspect of KK Slider's operation involves the possibility that his musical programming serves objectives that extend beyond simple social management to encompass more sinister purposes like consciousness harvesting, psychological experimentation, or preparation for social transitions that may not serve community welfare or individual development interests. The cumulative effects of years of exposure to his musical programming might create psychological conditions that serve external objectives rather than genuine community, cultural enrichment, or individual artistic appreciation. As you drift towards sleep tonight, perhaps with one of KK Slider's melodies still echoing in your mind, consider the possibility that the most effective forms of social control might operate through beauty, art, and cultural experiences that feel enriching and meaningful, while actually serving purposes that extend far beyond individual enjoyment or community cultural development. The songs that bring you comfort and joy might also be reshaping your consciousness in ways you cannot perceive or resist, creating psychological conditions that serve objectives you don't understand while feeling like genuine artistic appreciation and cultural participation. Sweet dreams accompanied by melodies that might be more than entertainment, where even sleep occurs within the influence of musical programming, designed to guide your thoughts, emotions, and social behavior toward outcomes that may serve purposes beyond your awareness or control. But underlying all the individual control mechanisms, social engineering systems, and psychological manipulation networks lies the most fundamental and perhaps most disturbing element of village life, a pattern that suggests the entire community experience operates according to cyclical principles that serve purposes far beyond the apparent goals of social harmony, economic development, or cultural enrichment. The seasonal cycle, as metaphysical reset theory proposes that the regular progression of seasons within village environments doesn't represent natural, temporal flow or environmental change, but rather systematic reality, resets that maintain community stability while preventing residents from achieving the kind of psychological development and social evolution that might lead them to question the nature of their existence or seek alternatives to their carefully managed lives. This theory emerges from careful observation of how seasonal transitions affect not just environmental conditions but fundamental aspects of village reality, community dynamics, and individual psychological states in ways that suggest artificial, rather than natural cyclical processes. The changes that accompany seasonal transitions extend far beyond weather patterns and resource availability to encompass systematic alterations in social relationships, economic opportunities, and even individual memory and personality characteristics that reset community conditions according to predetermined parameters rather than allowing natural development and evolution. The spring season consistently brings what appears to be renewal and fresh beginning energy that encourages residents to start new projects, form new relationships, and pursue goals with enthusiasm that feels genuine, but follows predictable patterns across multiple seasonal cycles. This renewal energy doesn't emerge from natural psychological responses to environmental change, but rather from systematic psychological conditioning that resets individual motivation levels, social dynamics, and community priorities according to programming, designed to maintain engagement with village systems while preventing the kind of sustained development that might lead to fundamental changes in social organization or individual consciousness. The psychological effects of spring renewal consistently include temporary amnesia about previous seasonal cycles, difficulties, or dissatisfactions that might have developed during winter months. Residents begin each spring with optimism and energy that feels authentic, but actually represents psychological reset processes that eliminate accumulated awareness of systemic problems, social limitations, or individual frustrations that might otherwise lead to genuine personal growth or social change efforts. Summer brings intensification of social activities, community events, and collaborative projects that create the appearance of vibrant community life, while actually serving to reinforce social bonds and collective identity in ways that prevent individual psychological development and critical thinking about community structures. The increased social interaction during summer months isn't driven by natural human desires for connection and shared experience, but by programming designed to maintain psychological dependency on community systems while preventing the kind of solitude and reflection that might lead to authentic self-discovery or social awareness. The summer activities that feel most enjoyable and meaningful typically involve collective projects, community celebrations, and shared experiences that reinforce group identity and social cohesion, while subtly discouraging individual expression, independent thinking, or personal development that might challenge established community norms or social hierarchies. The satisfaction that residents derive from summer community involvement masks the reality that these activities serve social control functions rather than genuine human development or cultural enrichment. Autumn introduces psychological conditioning that encourages preparation, resource accumulation, and community security measures that reinforce dependency relationships, while creating artificial scarcity concerns that motivate continued participation in economic and social systems that serve community management objectives rather than genuine individual or collective welfare. The autumn harvest activities and preparation rituals create the illusion of meaningful work and community cooperation, while actually serving to maintain psychological investment in systems that may not serve residents' authentic, long-term interests. The psychological effects of autumn preparation include increased anxiety about resource security, social stability, and community survival that motivate residents to focus their energy on system maintenance and community preservation, rather than exploring alternatives or questioning the fundamental structures that govern their lives. The autumn mindset consistently prevents the kind of experimental thinking or risk-taking behavior that might lead to genuine social innovation or individual liberation from established patterns. Winter brings systematic, psychological isolation and introspection that initially appears to offer opportunities for individual reflection and personal development, but actually serves to process and integrate the psychological conditioning accumulated during other seasonal phases while preventing genuine self-discovery or critical awareness of community control mechanisms. The winter solitude doesn't foster authentic psychological growth, but rather consolidates programming and behavioral conditioning in ways that prepare residents for renewed engagement with community systems during the upcoming spring reset. The winter psychological processes include memory consolidation that selectively reinforces positive associations with community life, while suppressing or recontextualizing negative experiences, doubts, or criticisms that might have emerged during the previous seasonal cycle. Residents emerge from winter with renewed appreciation for community systems and social relationships, while having forgotten or minimized whatever concerns or dissatisfactions they might have developed about their circumstances or life choices. But the most disturbing aspect of the seasonal reset system involves the way it prevents genuine temporal continuity and authentic personal development by systematically interrupting natural, psychological, and social evolution processes. Normal human development depends on the ability to build upon previous experiences, learn from mistakes, and gradually develop more sophisticated understanding of self and society through sustained reflection and experimentation. The seasonal reset system prevents this natural development by regularly returning residents to baseline psychological states that eliminate accumulated wisdom, experience, and critical awareness. The community events and cultural activities that mark seasonal transitions serve dual functions as genuine celebrations and subtle programming reinforcement mechanisms that ensure residents experience each seasonal reset as natural and desirable rather than recognizing it as artificial manipulation of their psychological and social development. The rituals, festivals, and shared experiences associated with seasonal change create positive emotional associations with reset processes, while masking their function as barriers to authentic growth and evolution. The economic systems that govern resource production, distribution, and accumulation throughout seasonal cycles create artificial scarcity and abundance patterns that maintain psychological investment in community survival, while preventing the kind of resource security that might enable residents to pursue independent goals or question established social arrangements. The seasonal economic variations don't reflect natural resource cycles, but rather programmed conditions designed to maintain dependency and prevent psychological or social independence. The social relationship patterns that characterize different seasonal phases create the appearance of natural human social rhythms, while actually serving to prevent the kind of deep, sustained interpersonal connections that might foster mutual support for questioning community systems or pursuing alternatives to established social organization. The seasonal variations in social interaction intensity and focus ensure that relationships remain within parameters that support community stability rather than individual or collective liberation. The environmental changes that accompany seasonal transitions extend beyond normal weather and ecological patterns to encompass subtle but systematic alterations in the physical and psychological atmosphere of village environments that support the conditioning and reset processes associated with each seasonal phase. The changes in light, temperature, air quality, and environmental energy aren't just meteorological phenomena, but carefully calibrated environmental programming that facilitates psychological conditioning and behavioral modification. The individual's psychological responses to seasonal transitions consistently follow patterns that suggest conditioning rather than authentic emotional and cognitive responses to environmental change. Residents experience mood alteration, motivation change, and behavioral shifts that align with seasonal programming objectives, rather than reflecting genuine personal responses to changing circumstances or natural human adaptation to environmental cycles. The long-term effects of repeated seasonal reset cycles include gradual erosion of individual psychological development, critical thinking capabilities, and authentic self-awareness as residents become increasingly adapted to cyclical rather than linear personal growth patterns. The inability to sustain psychological development across seasonal transitions prevents the accumulation of wisdom, experience, and social awareness that might enable recognition of the artificial nature of community systems or motivation to seek alternatives. The resistance mechanisms available to residents who might recognize the artificial nature of seasonal reset processes remain limited by their psychological adaptation to cyclical rather than linear development patterns and their isolation from perspectives that might provide understanding of alternative ways of organizing individual and community life that allow for genuine personal and social evolution. As you settle into sleep tonight, perhaps feeling the subtle psychological shifts that accompany whatever seasonal transition currently influences your village environment, consider the possibility that the natural rhythms that feel so comforting and meaningful might actually represent barriers to authentic development and genuine self-discovery. The seasonal cycles that provide structure and meaning to village life might also prevent you from ever becoming fully yourself or achieving the kind of sustained growth that would enable you to recognize and transcend the limitations of your carefully managed existence. Sweet dreams within cyclical patterns that might be more constraining than comforting, where even sleep occurs. According to seasonal programming designed to maintain your psychological adaptation to reset processes that prevent genuine, personal, and social evolution, while feeling like natural rhythms of renewal and growth, but permeating every aspect of village life, underlying all the seasonal resets and psychological conditioning systems, lies the most pervasive and sophisticated control mechanism of all, one that operates through the very foundation of community interaction and social organization, while remaining almost completely invisible to conscious awareness. The communication network theory reveals that the seemingly innocent systems through which villagers exchange information, share experiences, and maintain social relationships actually constitute a comprehensive surveillance and behavioral modification network that monitors every thought, emotion, and social interaction, while subtly shaping community consciousness according to objectives that extend far beyond simple social coordination or cultural development. This theory emerges from careful examination of how information flows through village communities and the sophisticated mechanisms that govern what gets communicated, how messages are received and interpreted, and the ways in which seemingly spontaneous social interactions consistently produce outcomes that serve community management objectives, rather than genuine individual expression or authentic interpersonal connection. The communication systems that feel most natural and voluntary actually operate according to hidden protocols that filter, modify, and direct information flow to maintain social stability, while preventing the kind of genuine dialogue and critical exchange that might lead to authentic community development or individual liberation. The bulletin board system that serves as the primary venue for community announcements and information sharing demonstrates the most obvious aspects of communication control through its selective presentation of information and systematic exclusion of content that might challenge established social norms or encourage critical thinking about community structures. The messages that appear on community bulletin boards consistently promote participation in approved activities, reinforce positive attitudes toward community systems, and provide information that serves administrative objectives, while excluding perspectives that might question authority or suggest alternative approaches to community organization. But the bulletin board system also functions as a subtle behavioral conditioning mechanism through its influence on community attention patterns and social priority formation. The information that receives prominent placement and regular updating shapes what residents consider important, relevant, or worthy of their time and energy, while systematically directing attention away from issues, questions, or possibilities that might interfere with established community management objectives. The personal letter system, through which residents communicate with friends, family, and community members, operates according to monitoring protocols that enable comprehensive surveillance of individual thoughts, emotions, and social relationships, while maintaining the appearance of private personal communication. The letters that residents send and receive pass through filtering systems that can monitor content, track social network development, and identify potential sources of community disruption or individual psychological instability before they develop into serious challenges to establish social order. The letter monitoring system also enables sophisticated psychological profiling and behavioral prediction capabilities that allow community managers to anticipate individual needs, intervene in developing problems, and provide targeted services or interventions that maintain individual psychological stability while preventing genuine personal growth or social awareness development. The personal attention and support that residents receive through letter responses often represents carefully calibrated psychological manipulation, disguised as friendship or community care. The conversation systems through which villagers engage in daily social interaction operate according to dialogue trees and response patterns that create the illusion of spontaneous interpersonal communication while actually following scripted protocols designed to reinforce established social relationships, prevent genuine intimate connection, and maintain community psychological climate within predetermined parameters. The conversations that feel most natural and satisfying typically serve social control functions rather than authentic human communication and relationship development. The sophisticated nature of conversational control becomes apparent through observation of how village dialogue consistently avoids topics, questions, or emotional territories that might lead to genuine self-discovery, critical social awareness, or authentic interpersonal intimacy. Conversations that begin to approach these dangerous territories are systematically redirected through subtle but effective conversational manipulation techniques that maintain social comfort while preventing genuine human connection and mutual development. The gossip and social information networks that operate through informal communication channels serve dual functions as genuine social bonding mechanisms and comprehensive social monitoring systems that track individual behavior, emotional states, and relationship dynamics, while maintaining community social pressure and behavioral conformity. The information that spreads through gossip networks consistently reinforces community norms and social expectations, while discouraging individual expression or behavior that might challenge established patterns. But the gossip system also operates as a subtle punishment and reward mechanism that provides social consequences for approved and disapproved behavior, while maintaining the appearance of natural social dynamics rather than systematic behavioral modification. Residents who conform to community expectations receive positive social attention and support through gossip networks, while those who deviate from approved patterns experience social pressure and isolation that motivate behavioral adjustment without obvious coercion or authority intervention. The communication technologies that enable interaction between different village communities operate according to protocols that can monitor and control inter-community information exchange, while maintaining the illusion of free communication and cultural exchange between autonomous communities. The messages, visitors, and cultural influences that flow between communities serve broader social management objectives rather than genuine intercultural dialogue or authentic community relationship development. The technological sophistication required to monitor and control communication at the level suggested by this theory indicates underlying infrastructure and capabilities that far exceed anything visible within village environments. The seamless integration of surveillance and behavioral modification into normal communication processes requires advanced artificial intelligence, comprehensive data analysis capabilities, and real-time psychological manipulation technologies that operate below the threshold of conscious awareness while profoundly influencing individual and community behavior. The psychological effects of living within comprehensive communication surveillance include gradual erosion of authentic self-expression, increased conformity to community expectations, and reduced capacity for genuine, intimate relationships as residents unconsciously adapt their communication patterns to avoid triggering monitoring systems or social control responses. The natural human capacity for honest, vulnerable, and creative communication becomes systematically suppressed through subtle but persistent conditioning that prioritizes social acceptability over authentic expression. The long-term implications of communication network control extend beyond individual psychological effects to encompass fundamental questions about the nature of human consciousness, social development, and cultural evolution under conditions of comprehensive information monitoring and behavioral modification. Communities that exist within these communication control systems may never achieve genuine collective wisdom, authentic cultural development, or the kind of social evolution that emerges from honest dialogue and mutual discovery. The resistance mechanisms available to individuals who recognize the artificial nature of communication systems remain severely limited by their dependency on these same systems for social connection, information access, and community participation. Attempting to communicate outside approved channels or express perspectives that challenge communication control protocols results in social isolation, information restriction, and psychological pressure that most individuals cannot sustain without external support that may not be available within controlled community environments. The broader implications of the communication network theory suggest that human consciousness and social development may be fundamentally dependent on authentic communication opportunities that enable genuine self-expression, honest interpersonal exchange, and collaborative exploration of questions and possibilities that transcend established social norms and authority structures. The systematic suppression of authentic communication may prevent not only individual psychological development, but also collective human evolution toward more sophisticated forms of consciousness and social organization. But perhaps the most troubling aspect of communication network control involves its potential for creating what might be called consensual reality distortion, where controlled information flow and behavioral conditioning create shared beliefs, perceptions, and social norms that diverge significantly from objective reality, while feeling completely natural and authentic to community members who have no access to alternative perspectives or independent information sources. The cumulative effects of living within controlled communication networks may include not only behavioral compliance and social conformity, but also fundamental alterations in perception, memory, and consciousness that create artificial consensus about the nature of reality, the purposes of community life, and the possibilities available for individual and collective development. Residents may collectively believe themselves to be living meaningful, autonomous lives, while actually existing within carefully managed behavioral conditioning systems that serve purposes they cannot perceive or understand. As you drift towards sleep tonight, consider the messages you've received and sent today, the conversations that shaped your understanding and emotions, the information that influenced your decisions and priorities. Consider the possibility that every word exchanged, every thought shared, every social connection formed might serve purposes beyond your awareness or control, creating the illusion of authentic community life, while actually maintaining systems that prevent genuine human development and social evolution. Sweet dreams within communication networks that might be more comprehensive and controlling than any previous form of social organization, where even the words you think privately might be monitored and managed according to objectives that extend far beyond your individual welfare or authentic community development. As we drift towards sleep surrounded by these gentle mysteries, we're reminded that Animal Crossing's enduring appeal lies not in its surface simplicity, but in its reflection of our deepest human desires for community, purpose, and a place where time moves gently and every day holds the possibility of small discoveries. Whether these theories reveal hidden depths or simply reflect our need to find meaning in peaceful spaces, The village remains a sanctuary where the greatest mystery might be how something so simple can feel so profoundly complete. The economic systems that shape our daily activities, the social hierarchies that organize our relationships, the communication networks that connect our experiences, all operate within frameworks that may be more sophisticated than they appear, serving purposes that extend beyond our immediate awareness, while providing genuine comfort, satisfaction, and meaning in our carefully tended lives. Tonight, as you rest, let these gentle mysteries wash over you like the sound of waves on a digital shore. In dreams, perhaps you'll find yourself walking those lamplit paths, hearing the soft chime of bells, surrounded by the quiet wisdom of a world where every day is an opportunity to tend your garden and strengthen the bonds that make life meaningful. Whether your village exists as simple entertainment, complex experiment, or something beautifully mysterious that transcends easy categorization, it remains a place where peace is possible, community is achievable, and meaning emerges through the patient cultivation of small daily joys. Sleep well in your own village of dreams, where mysteries deepen the magic rather than diminishing it.